For the longest time, I was operating with a brain that was wired for failure. I wondered why I couldn't concentrate on a task for more than a few minutes without wanting to go and play some video games or binge watch some YouTube videos. I had big aspirations, but I was working with a broken brain. Years of polluting my brain with things like video games, things like social media, things like binge watching TV shows had absolutely turned me into a chimp. I was feeding my brain pure garbage, and as a result, my brain became pure garbage. It would be like putting petrol into a diesel car. Actually, no, it would be more like putting petrol into an electric car. The car just is not going to work properly. It wasn't until I discovered how to give my brain the right fuel that I went from a chimp with over 8 hours of screen time a day who couldn't concentrate for more than 2 minutes at a time to an actual human being who could concentrate for over 80 hours a week and had under 20 minutes of screen time a day. By the end of this video, you will learn how to not only avoid wiring your brain for failure, but learn exactly what I did to wire my brain for success. In this video, we're going to cover mental obesity, why you've wired your brain for failure, and how to wire your brain for success. So first of all, what are we actually feeding our brains? A lot of us understand that we probably shouldn't be shoving our faces full of a bunch of ultra-processed, high-calorie foods because that'll probably make us obese. That'll probably make us fat. Well, a lot of us don't seem to understand that we also shouldn't be cramming our brains full of a bunch of highly processed, highly stimulating entertainment because that is going to make us mentally obese. There are really three ways that we're becoming mentally obese. And the first reason is by giving ourselves the wrong fuel. I mentioned before how I thought that effectively I was putting diesel into an electric car. That is really what we're doing with our brains now. We're providing it with the complete wrong fuel. And to explain this, to understand this correctly, I think we have to look at what the most stimulating activities were over the course of history and what the most stimulating activities are today. So if we think 1,000 years ago, which is really a drop in the water in terms of our evolutionary history, the most stimulating things you could do 1,000 years ago would be something like having sex, winning a battle, or killing an animal. What is in common with these three activities? Well, these three activities are linked to some sort of achievement. In some way, these activities are improving your life, moving you forward. If we look at the first one, sex, now there's a whole nother discussion we can have about, sterile transient sex now, but sex 1,000 years ago, there was no such thing as contraceptives, birth control. Really, the purpose of having sex 1,000 years ago was to procreate, was to have children, to continue your legacy, to basically bring your genes through to the next generation. So effectively creating clones of yourself, probably going to be quite a rewarding activity. The next one, winning a battle. Let's say you win a battle, you've just acquired an insane amount of resources, you've just acquired new land, you've just unlocked a whole different part of the world effectively by winning a battle. So obviously winning a battle is highly linked to reward as well. And then finally, killing an animal. If you're killing an animal and it effectively means that you can now actually feed your family, you can stay alive, probably a pretty rewarding activity. And of course, because of how rewarding these activities are, you're receiving a huge amount of dopamine. You're receiving a huge amount of stimulation from these activities that are in one way or another moving you forward in life, progressing you in life. Now let's think about what the most stimulating activities are today. While 1,000 years ago you had sex, today you have porn. For a lot of people, the porn they're watching is literally more stimulating than the sex they're having. Because when you watch porn, you can effectively select between, a million different, random women who don't even know you exist and watch them have sex with other men. Fabulous. That sounds amazing. The next thing is video games. You can effectively simulate yourself constantly winning battles over and over again without having to actually leave your bedroom by simply moving your thumbs and changing pixels on a screen. And then lastly, you have social media. You can literally vicariously live through other people. You can get all that short form, high levels of stimulation, basically just sitting on your ass doing nothing. What is the big difference between the highly stimulating activities 1,000 years ago and the most highly stimulating activities today? Well, the big difference is that these activities 1,000 years ago, they were linked to reward. They were linked to achievement and progress. These activities are completely removed from reward. There's zero progress involved in any of these activities. They're just simulating what you could actually achieve in real life through your screens. Through literally watching pixels move on a screen, you're receiving more stimulation than you would from progressing your life in any way at all. And because these activities are so stimulating, because they're so enjoyable and they feel so rewarding, you're just going to want to keep doing these activities over and over and over again. And as a result, if you prioritize these activities, these low stimulation activities all the time, is that you're not actually moving anywhere. You're just staying in the same spot, but because it feels so great, because it feels so amazing, you can't tell the difference. You just think, well, this feels good, I'm going to keep doing this. So if we have a look at the effort to reward continuum, if we think about the amount of effort that you would have had to put in for the amount of dopamine that you would get out, historically, it would literally look something like this. The more effort you put in, the more reward you would get. So for example, something like killing an animal might put you up here. A lot of effort involved in that, but also a great reward. That would also be why things like, winning a battle, probably up here. Probably an incredibly difficult thing to do. You might have to kill people. That's probably going to be quite difficult. As a result, you're going to get a huge spike of dopamine. It's going to feel amazing. So this is normal. This is what the normal route would look like, is the more effort that you put into something, the more reward you would get out, because it was directly linked to some sort of achievement that you would get in life. But what's happening now is that we're actually finding things over here. We've unlocked little points on the graph where we can effectively put in zero effort, but receive 100 units of reward. You can receive infinite reward. Okay, so it feels amazing, but it's also incredibly easy to do. If we look at modern versions of a high level of effort to reward, this might be something like creating a profitable business, right? Incredibly difficult thing to do, but also very rewarding. It might mean that, you become financially free. You can live wherever you want. A lot of great benefits associated with that, but it's also incredibly difficult. Things like if you wanted to get in great shape, like you wanted to build a great body. Sure, that's great reward. Like it's gonna be a huge accomplishment, but it's also very, very difficult. It's going to take a while. You're going to have to put a lot of effort in. You might not see results at the start. So yeah, you're going to get the dopamine. You're going to feel like pretty decent, but it's also going to be a lot of effort. But why would you want to do these activities when you can get the same feeling, the same dopamine feeling, without actually putting in any effort at all? Whereas I could work out, I could, do a workout and eat healthy. I could also just sit on my ass and watch TikTok. I could play video games. I could watch porn. I could do things that are as close to zero effort as possible, but spike as much dopamine, if not more, actually almost definitely more, than activities that are very, very difficult. We're always going to want to choose this. We're always going to want to choose the easy route when faced with these two options. Because these things are so alien to our environment, we really don't know how to deal with them just yet. So when we see things that are difficult, right, but they give us a great reward, cool, we're going to be drawn towards those things. But then when we see that we can get the same level of reward, we can feel the exact same with zero effort, we're always going to choose that easy thing. We're always going to want to go for the easy option. That's unfortunately the way we're programmed. Because historically, those things that were basically zero effort, they would sit you down there on the dopamine scale, right? If you didn't put much effort in, if there was no real great tangible benefit to your life, it also wouldn't produce that much dopamine. But these modern day stimulating activities, just are completely off the scale. We're just not used to these at all. And you can see from this graph, it visualizes quite well why we're so drawn to these activities, why we want to spend all day doing them. Because they feel great and they're easy. They're really, really easy. And the big issue with that is that you're never going to be satisfied. Because historically, when you receive those huge hits of dopamine, they were also very, very difficult. You weren't necessarily ready to go again. You didn't want to just hit that straight away. It might take time to recover because it was so challenging. But because you can feel so great with no effort, you can reload straight away. You can just hit it again, hit it again, hit it again. That's why when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you want to do is scroll TikTok, because you can just get that great feeling straight away. And then it's breakfast time. Well, I want to feel that feeling again. So I'm going to start scrolling TikTok while I'm eating breakfast. Now I need to go to the bathroom. Well, I want to get this feeling again. So I'm going to start scrolling social media while I'm on the toilet. And then I'm on my way to work. I'm commuting by public transport. Well, I want to get this feeling again. So I'm going to hit it again. And as you can see, we just become insatiable because we can get this feeling for such minimal effort. We're just going to continue to do it over and over and over again. We're never ever going to be able to satisfy this feeling because it's so easy, because it's so low effort. We can just go straight away. If you just killed an animal, you would feel great. You would feel amazing. But you would also be like, I just spent, like the best part of a day hunting. I don't want to just go and hunt again. But if you can feel like you've just killed an animal with zero effort, you're like, I want to do it again. I want to do it again. I want to do it again. And your brain is thinking, well, have you just killed 7 woolly mammoths today? What is wrong with you? You just feel great all the time for zero effort. And that's why we just become absolutely insatiable. We just want to hit this over and over and over again. And you're never really going to want to stop. I remember when I was in my first year of university, so I probably would have been about 18 years old. And I was really into FIFA, which is a soccer game that you play on the PlayStation, which is what I was playing on. And every Thursday at 1 o'clock in the morning, they would release a team of the week, which is essentially like a bunch of new cards that get released, which is, really exciting in the FIFA space. And so I would be playing. I would be playing from, maybe 5 p.m. until 1 in the morning. 1 in the morning, I was playing FIFA. And then that team of the week would come out and, wow, that feels really amazing. What happens? When I feel amazing, do I just go, all right, cool, I feel great, but, it's 1 in the morning, I need to go to bed? No. I go, I want to feel that again. I want to feel it more and more and more. So what would happen is I would keep playing. And it would get to about 3 in the morning. And I'm like, I'm moving my thumbs to change pixels on a screen to move imaginary soccer characters from cards in a video game. I'm doing that at 3 in the morning. What am I doing? And really, to be honest, the only thing that stopped me from playing past 3 in the morning is thinking how socially unacceptable it would be for me to be up past 3 in the morning playing FIFA. Because other than that, neurologically, all I wanted to do was just play more. I just wanted to keep hitting that dopamine at zero effort, hitting that crazy dopamine spike. I just wanted to hit it over and over and over again. And as you can imagine, someone who's getting these spikes all the time, when I'm at uni, I don't want to do uni work. I want to feel this level of dopamine for a lot of effort. Hell no. I want to get up here and I want to do it for less effort. So of course I would just continue to choose the easy option over and over again. And as you can imagine, Thursday would roll around next week and I'm up at 3 in the morning playing FIFA, and it just wouldn't stop. And guess what? I was mentally obese. I was a mental porcatron. And that is the reality for a lot of us, is we're mentally obese. We always want to hit that zero effort, high reward, and we can never, ever, ever get enough. We just keep consuming more and more and more, and our brains just become absolutely massive. Not in a good way. We become mentally obese. So have you wired your brain for failure? Well, you've just got that taste, that nice taste, that sweet treat that you got, that high dopamine for low effort. You're probably not going to want to stop. You probably think, wow, this feels good. I want to do more. And slowly you do more and more and more. and you start to get hooked. You start to get addicted, and you can never really stop. And before you know it, you have literally wired your brain for failure. There's really three mechanisms by which you've wired your brain for failure. And the first way is that you're actually rewarding yourself for the junk. If we very simply think about it, now I've used video games here as an example, but you can replace this with any of your cheap dopamine. You can replace this with porn. You can replace this with social media. You can replace this with TikTok. You can replace this with the TV shows you're binge watching, anything you're doing. But what happens is when you consume, in this example, video games, you're going to feel good. You're going to get that good dopamine feeling. So what happens when you get a good feeling of dopamine? Well, you're going to start to think, I just played video games and then I just felt good. Maybe there's a connection between playing video games and feeling good. Just a hypothesis, but it might be true. And then you do it again. You play video games again and you feel really good. And you go, there might be something to this. So then you play video games again and then you feel really good again. And you go, hold on a second. All right. Every time I play video games, I feel really damn good. So now you play more video games and you feel more good. And as you can see here, this pathway is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. You're building that connection between the video games you're playing and that dopamine good feeling. So effectively what's happened is you've just rewarded yourself for playing video games. Your brain is rewarding you with the dopamine and you're constantly reinforcing that activity. If we look back at this example where the most stimulating activities you could do 100 years ago were things like sex, winning a battle, and killing an animal, the reason these provided so much dopamine is because we understood that these moved us probably more than any other activities that you could do towards living a better life, whatever that may mean. These moved us forward, and that's why they felt so great. That's why they produced so much dopamine. And the dopamine was really a reinforcement mechanism. It was going, you had sex, you should feel good doing this, because when you have sex, you're literally continuing to populate the world. You're continuing the species. Obviously, we want to feel good when we do something like continuing the species. Same with killing an animal. Like, cool, you've kept yourself alive. You should feel really good for doing this. Hence why you get dopamine. You're reinforcing yourself to do more of these behaviors that are improving your life, that are keeping you alive, that are keeping generations going. But if we look now, we're reinforcing you to do nothing. You're continuously back and forth reinforcing yourself to effectively just do nothing, to just consume more and more of this junk food. This isn't moving you forward. Video games are artificially producing a situation where you think that you've achieved something. It's artificial progress, where you think, cool, I've just won a battle. No, you've just moved pixels on a screen and made yourself think that you've won a battle. You've tricked your brain into giving you that good feeling without actually moving you towards your goals. And this pathway just gets reinforced until it just becomes second nature. We know, if I want to feel good, then do this. For example, if you're really into TikTok, you know every time I feel bored, I can just pull my phone out of my pocket and just instantly feel great. All I have to do is watch TikTok and get that good feeling. And as we know, because it is so low effort, but it is so highly stimulating, because it feels so good, you're just going to want to do it over and over and over again. So the second mechanism behind which you're going to actually wire your brain for failure is that you're reducing your motivation significantly. There's a study done where they removed the dopamine from the brains of rats. They effectively severed a connection in the rat's brain. They would have severed a neuron, and it effectively made the rats produce zero dopamine. And these rats were put in a cage, and they would effectively not move. They would not move at all. They were just so unmotivated, they would just sit there and do nothing. If there was food on the other side of the cage, those rats wouldn't even go to get food. They wouldn't walk the 20 centimeters across the cage to get the food. If they weren't hand-fed, if food wasn't put in their mouths, they would literally die of starvation. That's because they had no dopamine. They had zero dopamine, so therefore they had no motivation. So how exactly does this destroy our dopamine? Well, if we think about this is our dopamine baseline. This is like a normal dopamine baseline. So throughout the day, you're just chilling. This is like your they call it like the tonic level, like your average normal level of dopamine. But what happens if we do something like play a video game? Boom. We get a huge spike of dopamine. It's going to come down and then back up to baseline. There you are, right? That's what happens when you play a video game. And then you don't do much. And then you watch TikTok. And then you get a huge spike. And then you're back to baseline. As you can see, you're getting huge peaks of dopamine here. But this isn't normal. We shouldn't really be getting these huge spikes of dopamine. And what happens when our brain sees that you're receiving these huge spikes of dopamine is it goes, this isn't normal. We have to do something about this. So, to compensate for the fact that you have such high spikes of dopamine, your brain is going to have to create a lower baseline. So this is your new dopamine baseline. This is now the average level of dopamine you release. So now when you get those huge spikes, obviously it's counteracted by the fact you have low dopamine, so your average is a little bit more normal. What does this mean though? If we have lower dopamine, if we're getting less dopamine from everything, well, it means that everything is more difficult. Everything is less enjoyable. As we know, for the rats that had incredibly low dopamine, I mean, these rats had dopamine around here. That's probably what a lot of us have done to our dopamine. Because we constantly hit ourselves with these big spikes over and over again, our dopamine is effectively zero. And what happens when your dopamine is zero? As we know from the rats, you basically don't want to do anything. You have no motivation to do anything. And as you can imagine, if you have big goals, if you have big aspirations in life, but you have no motivation, it's going to be quite tough for you to want to do anything. And unfortunately, that's the reality for a lot of us, is where our dopamine should be up here, our dopamine is down here because we've artificially provided it so many spikes. And in a very real way, we've absolutely tanked our motivation through the floor. Zero dopamine. Life is not looking good here because everything is producing less dopamine. That means everything is less enjoyable. And obviously, if everything is less enjoyable, everything is going to be more difficult. You're not going to want to do anything. It's not a good place to be. So to tie this together, the third way that you've probably wired your brain for failure is that you're starting to actually crave convenience. You've wired your brain to crave convenience. If we have a look at this as a crossroads, as a decision that you have to make, you have two choices here. You can either choose an activity that's high reward. And when I say high reward, I mean high reward in the sense of a high dopamine release, a high reward from your brain for low effort. What does that look like? Well, that's probably going to look something like this. Something like TikTok, playing video games, scrolling social media, something that requires effectively no effort, but produces a huge amount of dopamine. So that's option one. A high reward, high dopamine, low effort. The other option is that you can get that same level of dopamine, same level of reward, but it requires a high level of effort. So that would be something like this. Something like working for 8 hours on your business. Something like, doing a difficult workout. Something that's difficult, very hard, but produces a high level of dopamine. What are you going to want to choose? You're at this crossroads here. You can choose the high reward, low effort, or you can choose the high reward, high effort. If you're on autopilot mode, if you're purely listening to what your brain is telling you to do, you're going to choose this every time because it feels great and it's easy. If you're in, David Goggins mode, you might choose something that's high reward and high effort because realistically, this is what's actually moving me towards my goals. This is going to progress me in life. I probably need to do this more. The issue is when you're coming down to these two decisions, when you choose the high reward, low effort, this is autopilot. This is choosing something out of convenience, something that's easy. You're going to always want to go for this. This is your default move. To do this, to make this decision and choose something that's high reward, high effort, you actually require motivation. You require a level of motivation to want to choose this reward. And what do we know about our motivation? Our motivation is down here right now. Our motivation is incredibly low because of these peaks we've given ourselves. We basically don't have motivation. So if we don't have motivation, if motivation is removed completely, then this is the only decision. This is the only option that you're going to choose. You're always going to choose the option out of convenience, the autopilot, the easy option, because you don't have motivation to make this decision. You're always going to go for the easy decision. And what happens when you continue to choose the easy decision over and over again? You're continuously reinforcing that pathway. You're continuously over and over again saying, every time I do this easy thing, I feel great. I'm going to continue to do that. I'm rewarding that pathway over and over again. And as you can see, this is almost not an option at all. This is almost just unheard of. That is why so many people are so impulsive, so short-sighted, only thinking about what is right in front of them. What can I get immediately? How can I feel great straight away? And it happens because we have no motivation. We've destroyed our dopamine levels, and we've continually reinforced the pathway of doing easy things. We're always going to choose this option. We're always going to choose the convenient route. I remember when I was studying for my university exams, and what I would notice is if I woke up in the morning and the first thing I did straight away was study, I did this thing straight away, I could actually have a pretty decent day of work. I could do this quite well. However, if the first thing I did in the day was, scrolling TikTok, playing some video games, doing something easy, my day was ruined. Like, there was almost no chance that I was ever doing this, because you've started your day and you remember this. You remember how good this is. You've reinforced that and you go, I forgot how good this was. And of course, because it's so easy to get that level of dopamine, you just want to do it every time. And you really just crave this convenience. And now that you're in a cycle of doing something that feels great, it's low effort, this decision just gets harder and harder and harder. And of course, as your dopamine goes down and down, this motivation is almost non-existent. So I knew that every time I started the day and I went for that difficult task, I actually tried to do some work, I would be okay. I could get some work done. But if I chose this, if I chose the easy option, I'd be cooked. And I actually use this. I recommend this to people I work with, is that first thing you do in the day, first thing you have to do, no alternative here, is you do the highest priority task straight away. If you start your day doing this, realistically, the highest reward activity in terms of your outcome of your future, but is also probably the most difficult. If you can start your day with this, you're probably in a pretty good position. But if you start your day with a super high reward, low effort thing, that day is going to be hard to recover from that point. It's going to be a lot harder to recover. It takes a lot more motivation. And if you don't have a lot of motivation, which you probably don't, you're in a tough position. So yeah, that's probably why you've wired your brain for failure. That's why most of us have brains wired for failure. So we understand the mechanisms behind which we're destroying our brain, making it harder for us to achieve our goals. What can we actually do about it? How can we wire our brain for success? How can we be an outlier? How can we be someone who actually gets shit done, moves forward in their life, and progresses? Well, considering we're mentally obese, we need to go on a diet. We need to go on a diet. On this diet, what we're going to do is we're going to eliminate that artificial stimulation, that cheap dopamine we were getting that felt great. It gave us a 100, a 10 out of 10 dopamine, but took zero effort. We're going to have to remove those from our lives because, as we know, if we can remove them, we can start to crave doing things that are moving us towards our goals. We get our dopamine baseline up. Life is good. So if we look at our dopamine right now, this is us. We have an incredibly low dopamine baseline because we're just doing an insane amount of stimulating useless activities. And as you can see here, we're getting all these peaks. Let's say this is TikTok. This is you playing video games. This is you scrolling social media. This is you watching a TV series, and this is you watching porn. What we want to do is we want to eliminate these activities. Because what happens is, when we eliminate them, you're no longer getting those big peaks. So your brain's going to go, well, hold on a second. You're not actually getting as much dopamine as you used to. Your dopamine is actually quite low. We're going to have to increase your dopamine baseline. So over time, your dopamine baseline might look something like this. Maybe not that high, but maybe something like this. Your dopamine baseline is a lot higher because you're no longer artificially stimulating your dopamine from doing nothing. So as we can see here, if we can start to eliminate these activities, then we start to increase our dopamine baseline. As we know, that means that we have a higher level of motivation. What happens if we have more motivation? We're probably going to choose the activities that are moving us towards our goals more often because we've actually unlocked this. We've actually unlocked motivation, and we're probably going to actually move towards our goals. So as you can see here, the plan is just to get rid of all of these peaks. That is really going to rewire your brain to love to work hard and to effectively not be wired for failure. Now, the issue with this, and I really noticed this, is that it's very hard to stick to. I would do this, I believe I first did this back in 2019. And I had, I was doing everything under the sun. I was getting all this artificial stimulation, all this crap. And effectively, I went from doing everything to doing nothing. I had all this stimulation and then I had nothing. And of course, it was quite challenging. Like I literally had zero dopamine. Over time, it got better. But it was just too much of a change in my lifestyle. It just felt like too much and I couldn't really stick to it. I couldn't stick with it, and then eventually it all came back, and then, I started doing this again. Dopamine baseline came down. I lost all my progress. So that's why what I recommend you do is what I call the 30-day rule. Now, what the 30-day rule is whereas before I just went, okay, I watch porn, I play video games, I watch social media, I watch TikToks, and I watch TV shows. Let me just get rid of all of it. Well, sure, you can do this, and it's going to work. It's going to also be incredibly difficult, and you're probably not going to be able to stick to it. So this is what I recommend you do. For the first 30 days, you go, okay, I'm not watching porn. 30 days, I'm still playing video games, I'm still watching social media, I'm still watching TikTok, I'm still watching TV shows, but I've just removed porn. Now, sure, this is a bit of a change in your lifestyle, but it's not a significant amount. It's not overwhelming. It's probably not difficult to, in 1 month, just stop watching porn. It would be difficult to get rid of everything, but just getting rid of porn, probably not that difficult. Then, what happens when the 30 days are up? Well, the 30 days are up and you go, okay, this is now no longer a habit. This is no longer part of my life. I can remove video games. So for 30 days, all I'm focused on is removing video games. I'm still watching social media, still watching TikTok, still watching TV shows, but I'm not playing video games, and I've already eliminated porn, so I'm good. So that's, again, quite a small change in my lifestyle. But it has quite a big impact because we've just removed 2 spikes. Sure, we've still got these, but overall, we're giving ourselves a lot less artificial stimulation. And then what happens after that 30 days? Well, we can go boom. Social media is gone. No longer watching social media. And then we adjust to that new lifestyle of no longer using social media. And then we go, all right, boom, TikTok's gone. And then boom, TV shows are done. And as you can see, sure, this took us 5 months, but we've got rid of everything and we've done it in a sustainable manner. Because the reality is, if you removed all of these at once, sure, in 30 days, maybe you're still doing it. But in 5 months' time, these are all back on the menu because you haven't been able to stick to it. So now you're doing all of these things again and you're just back to square one. What was the point of that exercise? If you could do it in a more sustainable manner, if you could remove it 30 days at a time, I remove porn. Then I remove video games. Then I remove social media. Then I remove TikTok. Then I remove TV shows. You're actually going to be able to stick to that. That is not super difficult. That's just removing one small thing at a time, adjusting your lifestyle to that new normal, and then moving on. I think that is absolutely the most simple, the most straightforward method that you can actually rewire your brain to love working hard and rewire your brain for success. Now you're probably thinking, okay, so I need to get rid of these things one day at or 1 month at a time, and over time I'll get there. What order should I do it? Well, the way I think about it is remove the biggest peaks first. Remove the items that give you the biggest spikes of dopamine first. Because if we remove the biggest peaks, like if we remove that from our life, then as you can see here, we're getting a lot less dopamine. We're getting a lot less of this artificial dopamine on average. So that's going to, bring up our dopamine probably. Let's say our baseline is there, it's going to go up a bit. And then after that 30 days are done, you probably think, okay, I'll go for the next higher stimulating thing. Let's say now we're getting rid of TikTok. Cool, 30 days are up. Now I find the next most stimulating thing. Now maybe I'm getting rid of video games. Cool. Now, boom, dopamine baseline's looking pretty good. And now I can get rid of TV series. And boom, slowly you get rid of everything, but you do it in order of the most stimulating first to the least, because it is going to have the biggest impact on your dopamine. So that's the exact way I would do it. I would start off, I would eliminate the biggest peak, then the second, then the third. So you're probably wondering, okay, so what are the biggest culprits? What is producing the biggest spikes of dopamine? Well, if we look at this list here, for example, porn is going to produce a huge amount of stimulation, especially considering the amount of time you're using it. Same thing with like TikTok. It's very high stimulation. It's very fast paced, very quick. That's going to produce a lot. Social media and video games, pretty similar. TV shows. Then after that, you might have something like watching movies, maybe watching sport. All of these things would also contribute, but focus on the biggest peaks first. Biggest culprits, porn, and short form social media content. For basically everyone, unless you have like an actual drug problem, that's going to be the best place to start. I'd start there. So I remember maybe a year and a half ago when I completely eliminated all of my quick hits, all of this cheap dopamine from my life completely. And I did it gradually. Over time. I didn't just do it all at once. And when I got to the point where I'd literally eliminated everything, I thought, hold on a second, I'm now working 10 times harder than I used to. I'm actually enjoying working harder. I'm achieving my goals at such a fast pace. I'm thinking more long term. This is such a better way of living life. And I really just thought, I'm never going back. I'm never, ever going back to how I used to live. And I've really kept it. I never, ever want to go back to living life with all of this artificial high stimulation nonsense, because it's just noise. It's just preventing you from moving towards your goals. I think this stuff doesn't have a place in your life. If you really have big goals, big ambitions, this stuff is really, really getting in the way. And having removed it, having significantly improved the quality of my life, I am never, ever, ever going back. So that was why you have wired your brain for failure. This is how you can rewire your brain to actually succeed. So if you want to know everything that I did that turned me from that ADHD chimp into basically someone who feels like they're on the limitless pill 24/7, then I have everything that I can't tell you on YouTube in my free community. I'll leave a link below, or you can book a free call with me and we can see how we can help you. If you did like the video, if you did get value out of it, then please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.